Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on January 3rd, 2026 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I've made it my life journey to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my own day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years, with varying degrees of success depending on their own personal efforts. Now, before we get into anything, absolutely Happy New Year to every one of you. Really glad to have you back. And we definitely want to tip our hat to Storm. He usually hides in the background. He is our primary moderator that hides in the background to make sure technology plays nice. And if we do have a problem child, they are removed before they become a problem. Okay. Now today we are going to be looking at, well, before we do that, we have Operation Shutdown in with the gold. How you doing? I am glad you enjoyed it their operation. I'm getting a little more organized, or trying to anyway. And as things go on, I'm hoping to improve it. That said, with that in mind, we are going to continue moving through the year, making things change. What we're looking at tonight is pay scales and the work week length in the consortium. Now, understand, depending on the planet, they have their own finances. They've got their own systems. Okay, in the consortium, in other words, when you're on ship in consortium space, everything is worked. Renee Andrews, Happy New Year. How are you doing? Glad you could join us. You are in with the silver. They do everything based on an average work time. So when they take an item that has to be done, whether it's a cleaning job or constructing something, they calculate out the average time it takes for an individual that knows what they're doing to actually do the job. Okay. Once that is figured out, that's what you get paid. You get paid in man hours. When you desire to buy something, you forfeit some of your man hour calculation. Now the thing is, in the consortium, food is free. Nobody pays for it. Okay, or more to the point, nobody has to pay extra for it. The consortium foots the bill for the whole thing, and it's included in your accommodation and what have you. The thing is, they do not separate how long you've been there. They don't work with the idea of, oh, you've got X number of years working. They don't care. It literally is, this is a job, this is what you get paid. The way you get a pay raise is do the job faster, especially where it comes to large piecework. If it takes the average person an hour to complete one, and you can do it in half an hour, then you're getting paid for two pieces in that 1 hour. Your pay just went up. Now, hopefully this makes sense to you. Fortunately, you don't have to translate it first. But they literally run, that's how your pay gets calculated. Now, the work week is another issue altogether. Because they have no solar clock, okay, they literally look at ship time. People only work 8 hours out of a day. Okay, there is no issue. Okay, there is no issue, and there is Storm popping in. Okay, there's no issue from their standpoint. There's no overtime. You work that long. Okay, you don't get overtime pay. If you work longer hours, then you simply get paid the extra hour or two. Okay, but again, they calculate it on a computer-generated clock. They don't have the sun to work with for obvious reasons. So what we're looking at is a very equal pay system. It doesn't matter how long you've been, you don't get raises. The only way that you will get a raise is if enough people are doing the job well that the length of time to do it gets cut down. Well, what have I got here? Oh, there we are. Thank you very much for that, Frank. I appreciate that. The reality of it is, and this is just a side note for you, Storm. That amount of money is more than I made through all of the tens of thousands of dollars of advertising I paid. Okay, this is why I work with these guys. Now, when we take a look at this, your work week, they clock the hour based on the computer, not based on any sort of odd time frame. They go, you're working this is the time you show up. You show up, and because it's in the consortium, they do it in a simple fashion. You show up for work. There is none of this issue of, I don't feel good, so I can't work. There's the issue of, I don't feel good, so I can't work. That's no problem. We terminate you. Only they don't terminate you by firing you. Okay? They terminate you by literally ending your life. Real good incentive. Operation, the answer is a short no. Okay? Then because of the evolution that they've got, people know full well, if you're working on these hours. Okay, this is your job. Show up on time, do it. If there is a manager that does something wrong, they are kept close tabs on, but not by a union. They're kept close tabs by the actual owners of the company or of that section of the company. The consortium frowns on biased treatment. Okay, and what they end up doing, if there is a problem manager or a problem employee, they do not fire them. Well, sometimes they get creative and fire them out the airlock. But there is no labor union. There is none of this, we're not happy, we're going on strike. Okay, usually if there's that kind of complication, if it's bad enough to cause people to band together, most of the time, and it's very rare it occurs, you end up with the employees terminating the management staff. Now, this is a problem because that usually results in the consortium terminating the employees. Now, understand, there are some species that on their own worlds, promotion is done by attrition. Okay, but you got to remember, I'm not going into all the different possibilities on the way they do things. Okay, but in the consortium itself, you've got a work week that is 5 days a week, 5 days in a row. You work an 8-hour shift. Okay, and the rest of the time you can either go and do what you will or study and go in and get your education in order to enhance your array. Because the more skills you have, the more likely you are to be put in a better posting. Okay. And, ironically, some people, when they get ready for a promotion, the consortium has a neat little idea. We've got you are qualified for a promotion. Some people will literally ask to be promoted, will actually be asked to be moved into an easier job, primarily because they can do it faster and thereby make more money because they're better at that particular task. But nobody gets looked down upon when they do that. Okay, it's not a question of, you stepped into a lower grade job. It is simply a question of, Did you go there because you asked to, or did you go there because you weren't qualified to do the other job? And that's the other catch to this. If you're doing a job, including a political job, if you're not doing the job properly, you will immediately get stepped down to your former position. But there is this option. You can fight it. If you fight the demotion, if you will, what ends up happening is you get killed. There is no, it's a pretty black and white problem, but you got to remember, there are so many people in the consortium. Okay, all of them are working doing something. One of the biggest jobs that they've got is housekeeping. And no, they do not have robots that run around and do it, except on the outside of the ships. You know, on the outside of the consortium ships, they do have robots that go around. They're actual robots. They are not AI. Okay, AI has too many complications for them. Not the least of which is the Xenon. Okay, which have a tendency of overriding AI bots and turning them into drones. So when you're looking at work, the issue is simple. You apply for a job. Okay, you walk in, you've got a job right off the bat. There's no interview or anything. It's I want to go to work. So what they do is they go, okay, you're in the consortium, you're on a ship, we need cleaners. So you've now got a job. If you desire something more, that's when you go in and you put your name on a list. And that's done through a computer keyboard. You just put your name, this is who I am, here's my qualifications, and they'll move you elsewhere if you're qualified. But that's where the free education comes in. And again, your hourly wage is easy. They work in man hours. You put in a man hour of work, and for instance, let's say you're getting a really good meal and it takes an hour to make. And I don't know about you guys, but I have found cooking myself, there are many times where it takes an hour to put a meal together. But when the cooks in the consortium are cooking, they cook in 1 hour enough food for literally hundreds of people. And if you've ever worked in the military in a mess hall, you probably understand how that works. Okay, so you go in and that's how what gets handed to you for free. You don't have to pay for accommodation. It is literally just part of the consortium. Your accommodation is part of what your pay is. Okay, it's also why you've got access to free education. Now, can you learn other things that the consortium itself doesn't directly teach? Certainly. They have a very well-developed computer network. Makes the internet look like an absolute joke. Okay, but you can absolutely take courses. But if you're taking internet courses, okay, you're paying, you take your consortium hours, they get translated into whatever species you're dealing with that's doing the training. They get transferred to their kind of pay, and they get paid in their currency. You know, one of the things we have to remember with regards to the whole pay thing is it's not a question of I'm not getting paid enough, I want more money, and I'm going to strike if I don't get it. You're literally told, this is what you're getting paid. That's the end of the discussion. Now, you can turn down work. Of course, the fact is, if you turn down work and you say, I don't want to be I'm not qualified for anything else, but I don't desire to be a cleaner. That's no problem. You can turn it down. They will drop you off at the nearest atmosphere capable starport and let you go with no money, no accommodation, and no way off. And then you get to fend for yourself. But that applies to everybody. It's not one species or one social class. It's everybody. And even if, let's say, you come from high society in your community, and you come onto a consortium ship, you do not get special treatment. You get a standard wage with standard expectations. And it's kind of comical because there are those people that go, but I'm so and so from such and such a planet. I own this, that, and the other thing. And the consortium people will look at you and go, and your job is still this. You still have to show up for work at this hour. Well, that's too early for me. Well, that probably sucks to be you. The thing is, there is no, in this issue that we've got all these freedoms on Earth, that you get to make decisions based on what works for you, is not an option in the consortium. Now, understand, virtually every species has had the same thing. Okay, they've gone through these same arguments that we've gone, that humans are going through. But the consortium evolved way earlier than mankind arrived, and has eliminated those leeways. Now it's a question of, here's the job, this is what you're doing. You're getting paid 1 man hour for 1 man hours of work. Okay, and with that in mind, because accommodation is free, you don't have to worry about it. What you're using your money on is the luxuries. In other words, upgraded social clothing, which is not provided for free. You're provided a standard jumpsuit, utilitarian jumpsuit that you get for free. If it gets damaged, then it gets replaced. If it gets dirty, you turn it in, as in you put it in the laundry chute, and you pick up a new one. There's none of this issue of having a nickel and dime situation. This is one of the neat things about it, is there is none of this argument of, I shouldn't have to do this because I've been here for 10 years. Well, the fact you're still there after 10 years says you didn't take the time to educate yourself to make you more viable in a different position. Technically, yeah, I do have a job in the consortium. I act as a liaison. Basically, I go in to help people come to the understanding that they really are not any different than somebody else. Okay, I was literally called in to help deal with the Xenon reps when they first showed up. Okay, when they first showed up with the idea they were going to wipe out the bionomes. Okay, many of these people do not, and you got to remember, most species do not do well thinking outside the box. Myself, I'm still trying to figure out where the box was or where the box is. But that is primarily what I end up doing. Have I learned how to do their cleaning and what have you? Yeah. And like you, I don't like cleaning any more than the next guy. Maybe worse. Okay. But because of the situation I've got, and anybody can get there, understand I'm not that special in that department. I just don't see a difference between people. And one of the important factors is if you are working, okay, you get paid. It's not a question of, oh, you're a lesser citizen. I am not a member of the consortium, okay, because of the fact I live here on Earth, and Earth does not have a one world government. So when you're looking at people, you can see anybody. There are some people that cannot do a job. There is no way that a Corlock or that a human will ever work on a Corlock shell on the inside of a Corlock ship. It's never going to happen. Okay. As a matter of fact, there's very few species that can work on the repair or manufacture of Corlock ships. Okay. That's because people, corporeals are not designed to work on them. That's your biggest problem there. But in answer to the obvious question, yes, I have seen others with jobs as well. Most of them have cleaning jobs. Okay. And sometimes you look at it going, well, why are we cleaning this wall that looks like it's spotless? Well, the reason being there's a lot of microbes that can be problematic, some of which can literally damage ships. So you just go through the area and you're quite often repeating the same place. You know, it's not like you clean it once a month. Okay. One of the things you got to remember is with the number of people they've got, there's a lot of traffic around there. The other thing, you can actually, you can put your name in to lead a work crew. Okay. And there are different pay scales, and do not ask me to go into those. Okay. But there are different pay levels that get handed to you, given that you've got more responsibility. But it still works the same way. If you're not doing your job properly, and by the way, the nice thing there, let's say you take on a control job, okay, on a management position, an employee cannot come to you and go, "Oh, he was being mean to me, so I don't, I want to report him." The reality is, if you've already been put in a position of a manager, you've already been vetted as you're not going to do that. So yes, it is tilted in favor of management. They will look at the complaint, they'll go over the video, and everything is taped. Well, recorded. Okay. But it is recorded in interactive holographic display, which means if somebody is stepping out of line, the holograph can actually physically hurt the individual stepping out of line. Not necessarily an enjoyable concept. Okay. But you got to remember, these guys, when you're looking at pay, it is one job, that job gets that pay no matter who you are, no matter what your background or how long you've been on a place. If you're doing that job, you're getting that pay. Okay. And the only difference in their eyes between somebody that has a lot of hours banked and somebody that doesn't is the person that has a lot of hours banked can buy more things. Okay. Putting it in human terms, if you wanted to buy, for instance, a specialty meal and it's going to cost you $1, okay, if you've only got $1 in the bank, you're only buying one. But if you've got $10 in the bank, you can buy 10. That's the only difference. Okay. And there is none of this issue of I make more than you do, so therefore I'm better than you. Because all that you making more does is say, yeah, at that job, you're better than that person. And there are a lot of cases where that happens. Okay. But the idea, this is something the consortium people don't even think about. Is there a way I can cut corners to get this done faster? That is not part of their thinking. Humans think that way all the time, even on the ships. Okay. Oh, by the way, humans don't handle being airlocked. They don't handle it very well at all. But you got to remember, if you manage to get a job in the consortium, you are subject to the same responsibilities that everybody else is. The physical limitations and the physical requirements or atmospheric requirements are taken into consideration. You're given the gear in order to be able to do the job and survive it. But there are some jobs that certain people can't, and that are relegated to only certain species, because the certain species will survive where the technology they have to work with won't. Okay. This is just one of those neat little things that we have to take a look at. From my standpoint, the other thing, operation. I have acted on occasion I have acted as a courier. Okay, simply meaning get told, okay, we need you to take this piece of equipment or this piece of information in physical form over to this site. Okay, now they already know how long it's going to take. So you're only getting paid if it's only going to take an hour to get there. And rest assured, if you're traveling for an hour on board a ship, you're going from one end to the other. Okay, because they got neat little things called boom tubes, which means you stay either in kind of like an accelerated elevator, although not necessarily going vertical. That's so what you're looking at is a very balanced setup. And yes, people can, inside the consortium, if you come up with an idea that you would like to put to work or that you would like to put to use, absolutely open the door. The reality of it is this: the free market is there. Okay, meaning when you've got a job that you'd like to do, let's say for instance, you've discovered you really enjoy making hand tools, and you figure out I can do this and this is what I desire to do. You can have 7 other people in the same block asking to do the same thing. Okay, so you're looking at, you can start your own, and once you do that, now you set the price you get paid. You say, okay, I've got this neat little, for instance, pry bar. Okay, but it takes me an hour to make it. So it's going to cost you an hour, it's going to cost you an hour's pay. Now here's the kicker. Okay, let's say it takes you an hour to make it, but you figure out by using your knowledge and your purchase and what have you. Okay, you figure out that you've got an automated system. It takes an hour to make a pry bar, but you can produce 60 in an hour. Okay, you're going to make better money than the next person. Now, the best I can tell you on operation, if you are offered a job within the consortium, think carefully about one aspect. They're not interested in whether or not you're comfortable with it. They will tell you this is the job you've got. They will check to see if you've got any extra qualifications, but if they're offering you a job, they've already decided whether you've got extras. They'll go, this is the qualification, this is the job. Show up at this time, you get off shift at this time. Until then, do your job. Do not make the mistake of going, I'm feeling sad, I can't work today. Okay? If you are legitimately ill, you won't be fired. You won't even be demoted. Ultimately, you kind of have unlimited days off, sick days, because they will send over a medic to check you out. If you're legitimately sick, you follow medic's orders, and you don't have to go to work. Okay. Sadly, you won't get any extra money, but you still get your accommodation, you still get your clothing, and you still get your food. Okay. It's just the extras you can no longer get. But think carefully before taking it, because if you mess up, they don't care what your species is. They will terminate you. Usually you get tossed into what amounts to a fusion reactor. Okay, because then you get converted to fuel. No point in throwing you out the airlock. Okay, there are occasions where people end up outside the airlock. Usually that's an accident. Okay, and that's the nice part. You don't get tagged this idea of, oh, this happened because you were negligent. There are none of these labor rules that go, oh, you were negligent, therefore we're going to punish you. No, it's a question of do your job. Sometimes mistakes happen, But if you get the opportunity, I will tell you, learn from it. They treat everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what your species, they treat everybody the same way. And this works out well for you. The one thing that you got to remember is while you're doing your job, don't complain about the job. You asked for the job. More to the point, you were offered the job. You agreed to do the job. Don't complain. However, take your spare time, take your pay that you're getting, and utilize it to upgrade your skills. That way you can get into a more exciting or more, shall we say, enjoyable job for you. I would not hold my breath in getting certain jobs because there are certain jobs that take literally decades of training and or physiological components that certain species cannot operate. Okay, a Corlock can run a ship, can run a standard Consortium ship from one side of the room because they are full metamorphs. Okay, humans, you kind of have to have a seat where all the buttons are in the same place. And yes, to answer that question before somebody asks, they do have modified keyboards and what have you to handle for smaller people to handle the ship. So you can still get it, depending on what it is. But it really boils down to whether or not you stay focused and do your job effectively. If you're doing your job well, let's say, and we'll go back to the cleaner thing. Let's say you do your job as a cleaner efficiently and you're not complaining and you're carrying on. They may come along and look at you and go, look, we've got this other job. We've got this big job we need done. We know you're doing your job well. We'd like to put you into a minor management position to actually control and actually guide these other people and ensure they're doing well. But here's the kicker with minor management. You're the one that's got to determine whether somebody gets terminated. It is one of those jobs that and humans are especially fond of turning it down or complaining that they cannot do the job after they really get told what it is. Now, there is that other neat little thing, the work week. And it's not a week as in 7 days, okay? What they do is they give you 4 days on, 3 days off, okay? And, 4 cycles on, 3 cycles off. The reason for that is not the length of the days. It's so that you can work solidly, get the day worked, and then you've got some time to upgrade your training if you'd like. Or you just simply lounge around with your feet in the pool. Your call. They don't worry about whether or not you're doing anything specific, as long as you're not breaking consortium law. And rest assured, if you're breaking consortium law, there is a very short justice system. You really don't want to go down that. But what you are looking at is a situation where with the work, you got 4 days on, 3 days off, or 4 cycles on, 3 cycles off. It is based on a computer. And yeah, you've got all the alarms in place and what have you to say, you got to get to work. Okay, that's all geared in. This is where a properly run computer system works. It is not run by AI. They have corporeal programmers that stay on top of it and go through it code line by code line on a repetitive basis. I will tell you, if you get a job, there is a lot you can learn about the way they handle different individuals. Because humans have a bad habit, they do this for everybody. But humans especially are still in that infantile stage where they still see people as less important or less capable. Okay, absolutely. People that are missing limbs are going to have a hard time doing a job that requires two hands. But they're not looked down upon. They're just not put in that position. You know, as the saying goes, busy as a one-armed clothes hanger. If you're trying to hang things and you've only got one arm, it is not as easy as if you've got two. So they just don't put you there. They put you in a job that you can do. Okay? And it's not a question of whether or not you're mentally up to it. If you're not mentally up to it, you won't get the job. If you are, you're expected to do the job. And yes, they absolutely look for people that think outside the box. Okay, this is how technological evolution happens. When somebody takes an idea and enhances it or finds another use for it, all of a sudden you've got something, and here's the kicker to it. You come up with an idea or with an invention, if you will, okay, and you drop that on your boss's lap. This is what I've got done, what I've come up with. Now, here's the thing. Somebody out there is going to be going, well, what about somebody stealing your idea? Not functionally possible. First of all things are recorded and sent to the head hub. Okay, so you come to your boss with an idea, and you go, here's the idea. The boss goes to his boss, it gets carried up the line. The kicker to it is that when you do that, okay, the whole trail is reported to the upper line before you ever get there. So why, you ask, would they bother having you pass it on? It's a double check. Okay, make certain, in spite of the fact this is all public knowledge, make certain there's always somebody that's going to do something stupid and try and steal the idea. But in the end line, it gets caught. Okay, because they rely on computers. Yes, computers on Earth are fallible. They are fallible in the Consortium, with a lot more devastating side effects. The neat part about it is your work cycle is set. Now, do not ask me to remember the cycle they use, because quite frankly, I have enough of a hard time calculating my own cycle. But they run 4 cycles on, 3 off. And here's why they use the 4 and 3. The 4 gives them foundation. It gives people enough time to get into the cycle. You take 3 days off. The first cycle, you're working and getting back up to speed. Second and third, you're running full tilt. By the end of the 4th cycle, you're likely slowing down. And then they give you 3 cycles to relax. 1 usually to wind down, 1 to do whatever you please, and the other one usually you start gearing up again. Of course, there are those that become professional students. Now, a professional student does not mean they don't have to work. It means all of their non-work time is being utilized in education. Now, that said, is there a limit to what you can learn? No, but there is a limit to how fast you can learn, but that's your limit. Okay, so what they end up doing is they go, okay, this is what we're dealing with. You desire this skill, you desire to pick this skill up. Well, there's all these skills you've got to learn first. And no, there are no cuts. There are no challenge exams to see if you can do it. Okay, if you can do the task already, if you've already got the knowledge, when you take the test, this will be recorded. And that's where they go, okay, you took the test, now we start you on the next one. Now, they do have a test early on, but it's not a challenge test. It's an assessment. If you're more qualified to do the task than what the average person is, you will simply be bumped into the next level. It's that simple, meaning your time in education will be slow. It will be less than the average person. And there are those people that think extremely fast and those that just can't piece it together. There is no frown. There is no issue of, oh, you failed. You're a terrible person, or you're a burden. It's just, oh, you tried to learn that skill, and you didn't do it. Okay, so you don't have the skill. So what's your next option? You can go back as often as you'd like to pick up a skill. It's very much like starting your own business. You can decide you desire to be an entrepreneur. Okay, spend your spare time, spend your off time figuring out what you're doing. Like what I do here when I'm not on the air, I work in my office, sorting out the files I've got, making notes of what I've got to change, and adjusting it accordingly. But the important factor, and the thing is, the consortium offers a lot of options. What we have to realize, and it's one of those qualifiers that the consortium uses, they look at somebody's reputation on their own planet to see if they are going to be qualified or if there's a problem. Mike, how you doing? Glad you could join us. And I do believe I screwed that up. Maybe. We had Operation come in with the gold. Renee came in with the silver. And, oh, look at that. Mike, you are in with the bronze. So you do have, there is this issue of, if you cannot do the job, you can keep going back at it as often as you'd like to get the training. They don't put a limit on it because there's always jobs coming up. I mean, you can picture the problem. You're working on a fusion reactor and there's a hiccup and half the crew dies. We require more people right now. Now, you may have the qualifications and be sitting in a cleaning job. Well, because of the way that they work with seniority, as in they keep a list together. Okay. I gotta ask them, Mike, are we talking tropical fish or are we talking freshwater? Just because I'm nosy. And for that matter, how big is the tank you're talking about? I know one guy, he had lionfish. He had a couple of other, he couldn't have a sunfish. He had a couple of real exotic fish in an 80-gallon saltwater tank. And then the absolute genius grabbed 2 piranha and dropped them in. Not necessarily the best option. He ended up with a lot of red water and no fish. Well, still had the piranha. But you can, if you really desire to learn something and you've got the patience to do it. Well, that's a nice size. If you've got the patience and you're willing to take your spare time to get the education, the consortium doesn't care how long it takes you to do it. If you're spending your time doing it, then away you go. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, they'll let you carry on because there's no shortage of seats. Most of the education is done on a closed circuit setup. You pay for it, you tap in on your monitor, and you're set to go. But because of the computing power, there is no class limit. Okay, there just isn't. A lot of the testing is done because the computer program simply says, here's the answers. Here's the questions. You fill in the answer. If it doesn't fit, okay, if the answer you give is wrong, you got it wrong. There is no arguing. Okay, the computers use what my older brother, who was a computer programmer on Earth, he called it fuzzy logic. Now, I don't know if that's the baseline between what humans are calling AI, but it is simply a computer program that says, here's the skill, go and do it. Now, where it comes to hands-on, yes, there are class size limits. And because it's hands-on, most of the time, it has to be done, literally in the classroom. And thank you so much for that, Storm. We've just been told we're down to the 15-minute mark. Boy, does that ever go by in a hurry. I've really got to hand it to Storm. Okay, because Storm is the one that came up with the idea. I think Storm is. It might have been LA. But they're the ones that came up with the idea of cutting this back to an hour. Okay. And, in all fairness, it has worked out really nicely in my eyes. It's also why, with a day in the office, I only run that for an hour. Okay. I'm absolutely going to start at least at 4 o'clock. I may start earlier, that depends. Okay. But you don't have a different work week because you're a different person, or a different species. Your work cycle is 4 cycles, and on for 4, off for 3. And here's the thing: 4 gives foundation, 3 is the number of creation. This lets you have your creative outlets. And combined, you have 7, which is, according to universal numerology, this is the number of self-awareness. Okay, which means by balancing work and your off time, you end up in a real wonderful setup. Okay, now it's not set up perfectly. Okay, I'm still working on that side of it, but because I found a balance point that absolutely works like a charm, but it works like a charm for humans, not always for other people. So they work 4 on, 3 off, but you're only working 8 hours at a stretch. Okay, so you are looking at a setup where it is balanced, but you can complain all you'd like. All that's going to get you is removed from that job and put back on a cleaning job. And yes, there are jobs worse than cleaning. Sort of. Okay, what it is most of the cleaning gets done above shelf. Up in the hallway and what have you. And here's the thing. When you're up on top, it's light out. You've got lots of air circulation. If you're a problem child, you get sent down to clean out the lower realms. If you will, the sewer system. Okay, not always so enjoyable. Okay, but on consortium ships, at least you don't have to worry about roaming denizens. They are kept to a bare minimum. Once in a blue moon, you may run into one. Okay, but they are extremely rare, and usually that means somebody brought a pet on and it got away. And rest assured, some of the pets that get brought on, you're allowed to have a pet, but you're responsible for it. Okay. One of the other nice little things about it, when we take a look at the whole situation, is because the pay is just straight across the board, 1 hour work pay, and it literally boils down to the average person. And we are talking about literally millions of data shards telling you this is how long it takes the average person to do it. And every time that task gets done again, it gets upgraded. It gets recalculated. So you watch the pay will climb and it will fluctuate based on day-to-day operations. Okay, so much as you're making, let's say you're doing really well, and you're getting a payment, a cycle and a half pay for a job because you're quick. If everybody is slowing down and you're not, your pay is going to go up. Kind of an incentive for you to keep doing the job right. This is one of the things we have to take a look at, is that as long as you're doing the job, you don't have a functional option getting fired. You could end up dead, depending on what the job is. And that's the other thing. There is no such thing in the consortium. The consortium itself does not have life insurance. Okay, there are individuals that were independently wealthy that came in and said, this is what I desire to do. And they're told, okay, you're setting up what amounts to a life insurance policy. Okay. And you're telling these people this is how much they get back. Make sure you pay it. Because if you don't, not only is your whole business forfeit, but you're terminated. Because it's that kind of integrity the consortium will not tolerate, or more to the point, that kind of lack of integrity. Okay. But there are people that go, I've got a lot of money. I know how to invest it, or I know I'm a good gambler. And yes, gambling exists. Talk to the Orions. They're great at it. Okay. There are a lot of ways that you can invest your hours. Okay. And it boils down to going to your pay bank and going, I've got 50 hours banked up. I'm going to take that 50 hours and I'm going to invest in this company for this kind of a return. Okay. Just an example. I'm going to invest 50 work hours that are clocked of mine into your company. For that, you pay me back one hour, 1.25 hours per per sectional cycle. Okay. And most planets happen to have some sort of a weather cycle. Okay. On the starships, they adjust gravity and lighting at a standard pace in order to simulate what humans call the circadian cycle. Okay, that way it keeps people operating at an optimum level. Okay, it takes a little time to get your cycle stabilized with the shipboard cycle. Okay, but as humans have found out around the world, okay, you move to a different time zone. It takes you a little while for your body to catch up. Same applies on the ships, but they gear it to make certain that everybody is accounted for. Okay, and yes, there are certain individuals that have certain complications. Sanguinian, for instance, have to, and they've got to stay in the dark, so they tend to work on a reduced cycle. Now, the neat part about some of the tech they use, many species require solar power. They require that solar interaction. There are all kinds of places you can get onboard ships. There are all kinds of lounges where you can sit in, and they leave the windows open. And I don't mean the windows so much as the blinders. Okay, enabling you to get that input, that kind of solar energy. Okay, the idea with the consortium is to make sure you are healthy enough to do the job, not that you like the job itself, only that you're healthy enough to do it and that you're willing to do it. As long as that takes place, everything goes tickety-boo. But there is none of this idea of, I'm going to complain because I feel I'm working too hard. That's not an option. Humans come up with that a lot. Okay. And there are other species that will complain about having too much to do. Kaldar are one of these races that really they don't worry about it. Okay. They complain if they've got to go home. And yeah, you will find the occasional Kaldar up on the consortium ship, in spite of the fact they're an ancient race. Okay, so we're looking at a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of variables in there that the consortium has to accommodate. But pay is simple. Your pay is 1 work hour for 1 work hour's pay. Simple. Your cycle of work is 4 on, 3 off. It's that simple. There is no variation on it. You can, however, ask to work an extra cycle, and they'll let you. There's always work to be done. Sometimes just to change the pace. My regular job is I'm a cleaner. But I desire to do currying twice a week and I only get the 1 day off. You do that and there's no problem. Sooner or later, what will happen is you'll get the opportunity to become a full-time courier. Okay, and this is how that works. Thank you so much, Storm. I like the fact that they keep an eye on that for me. Now, give me 10 seconds because I want to make sure I do this right. Pull that up. Today is the 3rd, which means tomorrow on Positive Perceptions, we are going to take a look at the purpose of dreams. On Monday, we are going to be looking at building an empire. Tuesday, we're looking at believing your finances. And Friday, we go back to Frontier Friday. We come back to Frontier Fridays looking at the Srazazian homeworld. Okay, the rest of it I'll start working on right away here. But I do want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Glad to see you here. And we will see you again tomorrow. But until then, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.